Hey team, today we're going to talk about leadership with Colonel Retired Al Shine. Colonel Shine served 27 years in the Army. During that time he served 2 tours in Vietnam where he was awarded the Combat Infantryman's Badge, the Purple Heart, and the Silver Star for Valor. Colonel Shine commanded a battalion at Fort Benning. He was a professor of military science at Wheaton College, and once he retired he was the commandant of cadets at Culver Military Academy, a high school military structured boarding school in Indiana. Even today, Colonel Shine continues to lead and mentor as he is a leader of the Every Man a Warrior Bible study here at the Army War College. Colonel Shine's been married to his wife Sandra for 52 years. They have 3 kids and 5 grandchildren, so he's still keeping busy with his family. So the first question, Al, I had to ask you is, you've been a leader in many different environments, in Vietnam, in the Army, in a college environment, in a high school environment. How have you grown or changed as a leader over the years of all these different jobs?
Thanks, Eric. It's a good question, and I think probably the most significant thing that comes to mind is to learn to lead consistently with who I am. As a cadet at West Point, looking towards coming into the Army, I saw myself as Patton. But after a while I realized I'm not a Patton personality. If I tried to be Patton, it'd be fake. I'm more of a Bradley. And to use my strengths wherever I can, in the positions and in the way which they'll most impact on others.
That's a great point. Being true to yourself, not trying to be someone else, and using your strengths as your leadership style. I think that's a great lesson learned. So if you could tell all the aspiring leaders out there one thing about leadership, what would it be?
Well, I think it'd probably be as a commandant, I had 4 leadership principles, and my first leadership principle is that example is the sine qua non of leadership, sine qua non without which nothing. That if you're going to lead others to be the type of people you want them to be and to do what you want them to be, you've got to show it. You got to be doing it yourself. Now, obviously, there's more to it than that, but that's the start point.
That's a great start, is leading by example, and doing and modeling what you say. People actually see it in you every day. Al, you've been through some incredibly tough experiences in your life. 2 tours in Vietnam, and you also lost both of your brothers were killed in Vietnam. How did you persevere and ultimately thrive through these tough experiences?
Well, these indeed were tough experiences, and particularly the death of my brothers. Death is real. It hurts. There's real grief that goes with it. But I'm a Christian, and more than anything else, my confidence that God's hand is involved in what happens, that my brothers are in His hands, that as I faced death at times on a battlefield in Vietnam, that I could be confident that I'd either live or die depending on what God allowed, and He's a loving God. So that's part of it. I mean, it's hope.
Absolutely.
There's real hope.
Yeah, and your faith still plays a big part in your life today, as you're pouring into us and to other colonels as a mentor here at the Army War College. So I appreciate
a great privilege,
that.
By the way. Dealing with knuckleheads like him. Yeah.
So when you went to Culver, you sort of had to change your leadership style. You had left the Army. This was even though it was a military structured organization, you were dealing with young high school students. What was your biggest lesson learned as the commandant at Culver Military Academy?
I would say a few of them. First of all, it was to adjust my leadership style to the situation. As you say, these are high school boys. They're not drafted. And Culver was in bad shape at that time. As one of the alumni said, the inmates had taken over in the barracks for a number of reasons. And so it was clear that I needed to try to make a difference to get a turnaround. The first, of course, was example, to show them the type of, in the way I looked, in the way I acted, the sine qua non of leadership. Secondly, was to recognize that in that environment, the direct hands-on leadership were not primarily mine. They were the subordinates that worked with groups of about 50 boys each. And to try to, select good men there, and where they weren't doing well, to get new ones to replace them. But secondly, to empower them, to give them the backing that they needed to do it. And then finally, and fitting with some of my strengths, the boys needed vision. And I'm a good speaker, and I could look good and bring the cadets together and help to define for them what could be the positive experience at Culver if they lived the right kind of lifestyle there. So I use my speaking ability to pass on that vision.
And those are two key leadership lessons at the senior leadership level. Being able to cast a vision and get the organization behind it is so important. You talked about leading by example as another one, and then not micromanaging and empowering your junior leaders to go out and lead those young men, I think is a great leadership example. And just in closing, you talked about one of your favorite leaders that you learned about, that learned some life lessons as a leader, was a first sergeant that you worked for in Korea. Talk about what he taught you.
Robert A. Fowler, big, burly, combat veteran of the Korean War, who was very hard on the troops. Kind of a profane guy, and the soldiers were scared of him. These were young draftees. But just to exemplify what I particularly learned from him, we were training one day in the summer. It gets hot in Korea. We'd fought our way up to the top of a hill, and the guys were digging in, and most of them had emptied their canteens. And I look back and I see Fowler trudging up the hill. You couldn't drive up to the top of this hill. And he's got 2 5-gallon water cans over his shoulder. And he comes up there and he drops the cans down. He tells the platoon sergeants, have your men come, one at a time to fill up their canteens. And as soldiers come up, I heard a couple of them say, hey, thanks, Top. Don't you blankety blank blank thank me, you sorry excuse me. And just fill up your canteen and get back to work. Well, I could watch them kind of grinning as they went back, because they knew exactly what was behind it. Fowler, he was tough on them because he needed to be to make them good soldiers, but he loved them. He cared for them. And that's why when he knows they're thirsty, he's going to bring them what they need.
That's a great example.
Servant leadership.
Yeah, servant leadership, being tough in training, but also caring about them and putting them first. Colonel Al Shine, appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us today. Thanks for your service to our nation through the years, and thanks for continuing to lead here at the Army War College. And it's been great having you on Lopez on Leadership.
Thank you, sir. Good to be with you, Eric.